Good evening, Whitemarsh. I'd like to call the Abolition Hall Steering Committee to order. This is May 28th, beginning a couple minutes after 7. Welcome, everybody. We have some people in the audience. We have people through Zoom joining. JC, our Board of Supervisor Liaison, is joining through Zoom. And Deb Lukens may be jumping on the meeting too. I don't believe Ed is available this evening, so thank you, Darren and Dana, for being here tonight. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Mm-hmm. Do I have a motion to approve?
Yes.
Second?
Second.
Awesome. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So moved. Excellent. So jumping right into updates, I think we have John. Yep.
John's here.
We do.
Awesome. Hey, John.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for having me. So as everyone knows, the tree work portion has been completed in full. We have, just to give you an update, one of the reasons I wanted to be on here tonight was obviously I have a financial obligation to the township to make sure that we're going to be getting the most competitive and best pricing structure for the invasives. Putting a lot of projects out to bid over the last month and a half. Contractors are very busy, and I'm seeing a very high volume of exorbitant costs coming in. So I decided I'm going to wait till probably the end of June to obtain pricing when these guys start to slow down, because whenever they're busy, they don't put a lot of time and consideration to projects. They put a high number on it. If they get it, they win. If they don't care because they're busy. So I want to kind of capture these guys when they're going into the slow part of the season, because obviously this will be a late summer, early fall project. So once that's done, I'm going to give contractors 30 days to respond. I'm going to walk them through the site, go through all the details, specifications that are outlined in my report. And at that time, I'll be returning to you folks to present numbers that we have obtained.
Great. That sounds awesome. Any questions for John?
Nope.
Sounds good. Thanks, John.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And, okay, Marple Lane.
Marple Lane, we had 2 open houses. Oh, we have a hand raised, Sidell.
Can you hear me?
No,
Yes.
we can, yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I got a message that the host had to unmute me. I couldn't unmute myself. It's a question for John, but he's gone. And perhaps someone else can answer. And that is whether the removal of invasives includes going into the Hob parcel, or is it just the Corson homestead?
I think maybe, do we know if that was part of?
I believe
I mean,
it's the whole property. It's the Hall and the Corson tract, Sidell. But I'd have to confirm that with John.
Okay, I would appreciate it. Just, drop me a quick email. The 2 properties are contiguous at the rear, both owned by the township. And, it seems to me if there's invasives on Hob, you want to get rid of those so they're not making their way, seeding and whatnot.
I'm pretty sure it's comprehensive.
Yeah.
I think it is too.
Okay.
I'm going to try to
good.
text.
Wouldn't be.
I'm going to try to text John now. I might have it by the end of the meeting.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sorry about that. I just texted John for that quick. Hopefully he can get back to us. 14 Marple Lane, we had 2 open houses. I had a total of 8 visitors for the 2 houses, or for the 2 open houses. Walked the property. Looks like, you know, I don't know what everyone's idea was, but 2 of them were to rehab the house, and one to use it as a rental, and the other was to purchase it for their son as a first home purchase. The other one seemed like it was going to be a tear down and a rebuild of a single family home there. I'm not sure about the others. They were the only ones really giving
So
me
how many
any
total
detail.
came through?
I'm sorry.
How many total came through?
8 people.
8, okay.
So the opening for the bid is Tuesday, June the 2nd. So we'll have the bids there. That'll give us time for the solicitor to review the bids to make sure everything's in line. And hopefully we can go to the Board of Supervisors meeting on June 11th for, you know, a recommendation from the board. So at that point, I think they have 60 days to make settlement on the property. So moving ahead, fingers crossed that hopefully we get 8 bids or more. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe people that, you know, they either drove by there and didn't
Right, they
need to look at
necessarily
the property.
Didn't do the open house, but
Yeah.
would come anyway. Yeah.
So,
Craig,
Yes.
quick question. Are the supervisors compelled to select the highest bidder, or is there discretion in who they choose?
I think in their interest, it should be the highest bidder. But I guess if everyone meets the qualifications, then they would have to take the highest bid. If they don't meet all their criteria, they can eliminate it and take, you know, the next one and go down the list. So, but in our best interest, it would be the highest bid. So, we'll see what happens. If we don't get any, then we do it again. I think I might, you know, after thinking about it, I think maybe just a live auction would be probably a better idea. Maybe more exciting too.
Yeah.
So you never know. So we'll see what happens, but.
So June 2nd.
June 2nd, next Tuesday.
Okay.
Yep.
Very good.
Yeah, so that's the
Okay,
14.
and then programs, we have Juneteenth and the history tours.
Yep. History tours, Mr. Wilson's here, Mr. and Mrs. Wilson are here. And the first one went off pretty well, is what I'm hearing. All the tours are sold out, so that's great. There's like a waiting list, so, and it was nice. I mean, well, it wasn't nice, but someone had to drop out the last one, and first person on the list, they were like, oh yeah, they were really happy that they got to come down to it. So that was, that's great. I don't know if you want to give an update or anything on the tour itself, Mr. Wilson?
I gave the first tour out of 5, I guess it is. Nice thing about it, they all showed up right on time,
Yeah.
which was a little surprising. I took them around. I made 3 new posters in addition to the 4 I had before and put them in the buildings. I sent Laura a picture of the 3 new posters I've made. If you object to them, take them down. But I've already mounted in the different rooms.
We shared them on the website as well.
What's that?
We shared them on the website, the pictures of the boards,
Oh, you did? You mean the posters?
the posters,
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. Anyway, but I'd say the only hiccup on the whole thing is I talked too much. And the 45-minute tour, is that what it was supposed to be, 45 minutes or 9?
I think,
I forget what it's supposed to be.
That's what we talked about.
yeah,
It's
we
like a
said
good
45
number.
minutes.
Yeah.
I think you said it was an hour and a half.
I went over an hour and a half. I told people they want to leave.
But no one ran out, right?
Maybe we should charge them double if you're going to.
But not everybody seemed interested. A lot of people responded that they had always wanted to see the house, and they were eager to see what it looked like inside. But of course, these are empty rooms. I've been on plenty of old tours too, old house tours and whatnot. And some houses are empty, and most usually have stuff in them. So I'm kind of relying on the posters a little bit more to give a little more depth to what things looked like in the 19th century and this and that and the other. But I have plenty of stories I can go on.
That is so fantastic. Have we recorded you yet?
Just the Sid Miskiv.
Yeah, we need to get Rob over there to record you
She's
doing.
putting her blogs on the Montgomery County Historical
good.
Society website. If anybody ever looks at that under blogs, it's actually under Erica Sanson's number, of something like that. I don't remember her name exactly, but she's one of the people that writes the blogs for the Historical Society.
I still want to record you doing it
Yeah.
live, the tours.
She's been writing and putting, I think she has 2 or 3 entries in there so far, which I think are just snippets of what she's writing in a longer thing. So
Very
they're
nice.
pretty good so far. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Laura,
Yes.
there you go. I can help answer that question with the tour video. I have started looking at the footage. I have started assembling it together. It is coming along. I don't have a firm timeline on that yet, but I have started working on it. So I figured I'd put your mind at ease and say this has been ongoing, and I'm hoping that this can be done hopefully within a reasonable amount of time.
That's great, Rob. Thank you for that update. Coming live from the studio. Tom, were there any updates that you want to share about Juneteenth?
We are currently at 13 folks registered. We had one. We had 14. One dropped out, so we are at 13, and excited for the event in a few weeks.
And what's the capacity? Because it's not huge.
We had said we were going to take up to 35.
35.
So we'll see. Folks tend to sign up for some things last minute. So we'll see how the final rush goes. We have it being promoted in the weekly, and it's been on the corner sign, and we'll continue to do our best to get the word out, and hopefully we can get some more folks registered. And if not, we will have a great day with the group we have.
Yeah, no, it sounds fantastic. Really good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom, I find it a little hard to find on the website. I think when there's on your website where you have America 250 and all the events, and then you get down to what Whitemarsh has available, there's a long description of the Juneteenth event, but there's no link to what to do with it if you want to go. I'm not that experienced with the community pass, and maybe all you guys are very experienced with it. I'm not. So it wouldn't occur to me to go looking under community pass to find it. If I were you, I'd put a link on your webpage.
I'll talk to them about getting the flyer up on the landing page for the Park and Rec Department, and also to Tom Gailey about getting something on the website landing page to promote the event as well.
And then tell them to go to the community link or whatever it takes to sign up.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so the 501c3 update.
The update, the Abolition Hall Foundation of Whitemarsh was the name of it. We provided that to the solicitor after the last Board of Supervisors meeting when they agreed to that. So they're working on the incorporation of the 501c3. It'll take some time to get that underway and submit it, but they're working on that as we speak.
Great. I think it's over
Okay.
to you, Claire.
Okay.
Yay, this is a long, I'm so excited to have this. I mean, this has been a long time, not terribly long time,
almost
but I
a
mean,
year,
like,
yeah.
this is fulfilling
Yeah.
the agreement, and this is the
Here
result.
we are, yes. Well,
All the hard work.
we're pleased to be here to provide an update on the assessment and preliminary planning report. We have a document here that we're going to flip through and just give a high-level overview. Overall, the activities in this report are intended to assist the township and the Abolition Hall Steering Committee with developing a roadmap for next steps for the Corson Tract property. The goal of the roadmap is to support short-term activation and use of the property, leading to mid- and long-range planning and future phased implementation projects. We've been working for approximately a year with the township to familiarize ourselves with the buildings and surrounding property, to dig deeper into and compile documentation related to the site's history and evolution over time, and to compare those observations and findings with the existing conditions. We've also assisted the township with coordination on related efforts and investigations with the township engineer, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineer, and other consultants. We've also provided input on grant funding opportunities as well as programming and operational requirements. Tonight we have a brief review of the report. The report is intended to document existing conditions of the Hovenden House, the Malsby Barn, and Abolition Hall, and their immediate surroundings, and as noted, to identify an achievable path forward for planning and implementation projects. We'd like to thank and acknowledge the members of the steering committee, the township staff, and the Wilsons for their time and for the insights shared with us during this process. The contents include overviews of programming goals and use objectives, background documents and report methodology, project documents, which include existing documentation as well as additional documentation that will be recommended going forward, a historical summary and preservation philosophy, building code, life safety and accessibility reviews, assessment of existing conditions, and finally, suggested phasing for implementation and next steps. And those are outlined in the table of contents on the right, and on the left is a site map with the keyed in major elements of the property. Since we have limited time, I'll focus this evening on an update of the major findings and recommendations. While the buildings have expected construction issues for their age and history, including renovations and changes over time, the goals expressed in this report, which are to preserve the history and open space and provide an enduring setting suitable for community gathering and including programming for underserved youths, those goals are absolutely achievable. It is also very important to emphasize that in addition to addressing the observed conditions that are primarily the result of age and deferred maintenance, the property will require intervention prior to full-scale use by the public. In other words, modifications are needed to convert the property from residential to institutional use. Suggested phasing and implementation was developed to guide this transition, beginning with an interim on-site activity plan and leading to the incremental implementation of a comprehensive rehabilitation project that complies with historic treatment standards. Rough order of magnitude target budgets are provided to provide for the level of capital investment that will be needed to achieve these goals. I won't pause on all of the sections of the report, only to say that it's organized using a summarized content and graphics, which are included to keep a record of the various initiatives that have been completed, are underway, or are recommended for future study. And those, as you see here, related to programming goals and use, documentation related to historic designation, a catalog of prior surveys and assessments, and also the documentation used to record existing conditions of the buildings. The historical summary and preservation philosophy section includes a summary restatement of the historical events and people for which the property has been recognized with historical designations. A working assessment of the periods of significance is provided to help identify and recommend elements and features that should be preserved and kept in service to reflect the property's development. As we noted at a prior meeting, we recommend that the rehabilitation treatment strategy following the Secretary of Interior's standards for the treatment of historic properties be used to guide the repair, renovation, and modification of the buildings for reuse. And to recap what that means, rehabilitation provides the flexibility necessary for historic properties to remain functional and relevant while preserving their historic value and character. The overarching goal for this property is to ensure its long-term use by the community while maintaining its sense of place and historical context and supporting interpretation of associated individuals, events, and its broader contribution to the protected historic district of Whitemarsh. The recommendations for rehabilitation emphasize the retention of historic fabric where it remains extant and replacement in kind where appropriate. The treatment standard allows for sensitive alterations and, when needed, compatible additions. The report, as you see on the pages that just flipped through, includes references to documentation and graphics and historic images that support this approach, which provides a foundation for ongoing research and to inform future rehabilitation projects and related design decisions. The next section provides a code review, which includes a broad view of the requirements related to building code, historic designation, occupancy and change of use, accessibility, construction materials, and energy efficiency. And then the last section prior to getting into the phased implementation plan is the conditions assessment. And regarding the condition of the buildings, there are emergent conditions identified that we recommend be addressed in the near or immediate term, but by and large, many of the observed conditions can be best addressed as part of the more comprehensive rehabilitation projects that are anticipated to support the reuse of the buildings. Many of the conditions are related to moisture control and general maintenance, but other examples include structural repairs to wood framing are definitely anticipated. Keep in mind that these are masonry buildings with wood framing, with wood in direct contact with moisture at points of support at the masonry walls or earth foundation. Observed conditions include wood decay and/or insect damage, possible undersized or overstressed members, localized checks, joint separations, cracks, and other types of localized failure. Stone and brick masonry conditions are related to long-term water and moisture infiltration and erosion of mortar, and the need to refresh sacrificial coatings and finishes like stucco, lime wash, plaster, and paint. The chimneys at Hovenden House are in need of more near-term attention. Exterior wood elements show signs of weathering, deferred maintenance, or the end of service life at non-historic repairs. Roofing materials do not appear to be actively or excessively leaking except for certain conditions around the chimneys, but the roofing systems in general are well into their service life. Some interim repairs or replacement will be required in the near future. Windows have expected issues related to age, needing to keep up with paint and glazing materials, infiltration and energy efficiency concerns, loss of operational hardware, etc. But these issues can largely be addressed incrementally over time. Mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems primarily include considerations for immediate terms such as exterior lighting, fire and security alarm, but primarily it is anticipated that utility requirements and new building systems will require upgrade for change of use during renovations to move towards more commercial systems, ventilation requirements, and energy efficient operational advantages. There are also some concerns that can be treated due to air quality, as well as some environmental remediation with specific materials that contain hazardous materials. So using those observations, findings, and prioritized recommendations, the proposed implementation plan was developed to guide the transition of this property and its conversion from residential to institutional use, beginning with an interim on-site activity plan and leading to phased implementation of a comprehensive rehabilitation project. It's divided into 3 phases. The startup phase focuses on repairs, maintenance, and small improvement projects related to life safety that are recommended to support limited access for tours, events, and programs. Phase 1 focuses on increased access for pedestrians and vehicles, as well as protection, stabilization, and ongoing maintenance of the buildings and landscape to enhance usable space for programs while funds are raised for rehabilitation. This phase includes the goal of establishing a caretaker apartment to maintain a daily on-site presence. And Phase 2 sets the stage for comprehensive rehabilitation and capital-intensive improvement projects that are envisioned to support full utilization of the buildings and site for community programming. These projects will allow for expanded programming and a fully functional, accessible facility for collaboration with partner organizations. And just going to zoom in here. So the organization breakdown for each phase includes a sub-phase, which is on the left. And I'll go to the next page, which is a little more specific. Sub-phases to support incremental funding and capacity building. We should say that this is a suggested sequence, but it's not absolutely prescriptive. Work identified and goals can be achieved in a different order than outlined here, and that would be based on available funding and evolving priorities. However, the organization that we provided lays out a plan that endeavors to build each step on the other towards a more comprehensive vision. So again, the organization of this chart starts with a phase on the left, a target schedule with dates, preconditions, and what that refers to as things like regulatory issues, prerequisite design or engineering surveys, or specific funding needs. The next criteria is the goals supported, and that includes identification of certain activities, things that would support capital campaign or building stabilization. The activities supported gives a sense of the types of programs that could be added as each phase is completed. The space use identifies the buildings or spaces that would be impacted with each scope of work. And then the scope of work more clearly drills down on the buildings and the specific projects. And then finally, a rough order of magnitude. For the budgets, professional construction cost consulting was not included for this phase of planning. Rough order of magnitude budgeting was used to establish early stage, high-level assessment of funding needs. Project dates and status of construction, of course, have not been determined yet, so those are subject to market costs and escalation, which are to be determined. And just emphasize again that the numbers used here are not construction cost estimates, but they're intended to establish a target range of capital development needs. So backing up here. So this is just a look at the startup phase, much of which is underway, and those are preparations to accommodate programs and outdoor events that respond to site constraints, including limited vehicle access. So that's a big thing to work around still. And also to suggest appropriate limited use of the existing building configurations and facilities. As this committee and meetings have reviewed over the past several months, including this evening, this phase is focused on supporting immediate activities on site and kicking off fundraising and capital campaign initiatives. Repairs, maintenance, and small improvement projects related to life safety and general maintenance are recommended and have been undertaken by township and public works staff. And again, this is to support the current identified events and programs. We've also identified the need to protect key landscape features, as there will be some limited on and off use with vehicles, and important to keep traffic controlled as they enter into and exit out of the site. The expenses and budget for this phase will be through authorized township expenditures or other short-term funding sources, which are to be determined by the township. Phase 1 recommendations are focused on protection, stabilization, and maintenance of the buildings and landscape, and enhancement of usable space for programs, while funds are raised for comprehensive rehabilitation. A key milestone for this stage, or overall Phase 1, is for improving access to implement vehicle and pedestrian access improvements along Butler Pike. This phase also includes the goal of establishing a caretaker apartment to have a regular on-site presence. The total rough order of magnitude for overall Phase 1 is approximately $1 million plus additional authorized township budget items. And then Phase 2 outlines the comprehensive rehabilitation and long-term capital improvement projects that are envisioned to support full utilization of the buildings and site for community programs. The projects will allow for expanded programming and a fully functional, accessible facility for collaboration with partner organizations. And this is broken down into several stages. Ideally, as much of this that could be accomplished at once supports, overall economy of scale with projects and getting the project done in a more limited time frame, but if needed to support grants or available funding, it can be broken down, and we've outlined that in the chart shown on the left. The overall rough order of magnitude for Phase 2 is approximately $5 to $6 million. So leading us to the recap, the township has embarked on a path to preserve the important history and open space and to ensure the course and track serves the community at large, as well as provides programming for disadvantaged youths. This report is intended to document existing conditions of the Hovenden House, Malsby Barn, and Abolition Hall, and to identify an achievable path forward for planning and implementation. The recommendations for a planned and phased implementation strategy have been prioritized into the 3 phases we just outlined. To support effective implementation and ongoing facility operations, establishing an organizational structure that is dedicated exclusively to stewarding the property and its use may prove both beneficial and instrumental, with the ability to support fundraising efforts, provide day-to-day administrative and operational oversight, and facilitate the delivery of programming at the site. The township and the steering committee have investigated and taken preliminary steps towards establishing a nonprofit entity to serve in this stewardship role. In parallel, partnerships with like-minded institutions and organizations that share compatible missions can also be explored. Recommendations for next steps include ongoing emphasis on pursuing public and private grant funding opportunities, continued exploration of programming opportunities with potential partner organizations, ongoing archival research and documentation, and strategic implementation of planned projects to further the intended use of the property, to increase public access, and to bring forth the vision for the future that you have all been working towards. That vision and the possibilities for the course and tract are achievable and promise an exciting future for Whitemarsh Township. We hope that this report provides the necessary information, momentum, and guidance to support ongoing progress. Thank you for this opportunity to assist the township and this committee on this important project.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claire.
Thank you, Claire and Renee. Yeah, impressive report. There's a lot of detail, which I know is not possible to read.
Oh, you couldn't read
as
that?
you're up there. But I believe we're going to be attaching this to the minutes. Is that right, Craig?
Sure, yeah.
Yep. So you will be able to read and digest, but for the initial presentation, we wanted Claire to have an opportunity to go over it and, from a high-level perspective, like you said, and go through your points. So thank you. I am sure there will be questions, maybe not tonight, but in the future. Are there any questions right now, the board?
I might have a few.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. A couple questions, and if someone wants to jump in, I'll stop and let you jump in and keep going. Is there a different standard or cost when you're evaluating, let's say, the house, for it to be a residence versus part of the historical suite?
Not sure.
If the Wilsons wanted to, if we wanted to make it so the Wilsons could move back in versus
okay.
making it part of the historical kind of suite fabric of what we're building on the site.
Do you mean any of the buildings?
No, just the house.
The corner house?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are different building code requirements for residential occupancy, of course, and also zoning. There's also different construction standards that we would recommend for more institutional settings versus residential. Because of the very public nature of this property, and I think the goals, certainly some hybrid could make sense, and we've even suggested that as a good possibility to have a caretaker residence on the property. So there are different standards, both for code and for construction and maintenance and egress. And do you have any other points to add to that?
I think you're covering it. You were asking about cost.
Cost too, yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to gauge which is the less costly between residential and commercial, I would say. I mean, if it were to be 100% residential, there would be not the change of use requirement. So I guess there might be some savings there, but generally the rehabilitation would be pretty similar, I would think, in cost.
I think commercial equipment and requirements for ventilation and things that go along with commercial construction and institutional occupancy generally make things a little bit more costly.
Okay, thank you. And when you're hired to do something like this, and you walk into a historic building, is it part of your job to come back, if this is the case, to say, I know you guys really love these properties, but they're pretty beat up and it's going to be so expensive that we don't think it's worth your time?
Well, I think that's part of what we're laying out here, and I would say that these buildings, this property is very, I think, desirable from a rehabilitation point of view because of the history, because of the landscape and the setting, but also because the buildings are, I think, eminently adaptable, and they're in reasonable condition. They're simple structures that can be flexible and adapted to all sorts of uses over time, and that's exactly what you want for kind of a long-term vision for a property like this. So yes, I mean, we would identify anything that we thought was going to make these buildings not suitable.
Okay. If you were a teacher and you had to grade all of the sites that you guys review and make proposals on, how would you grade this in terms of, you spoke a little bit about its desirability, its story, which are great, the condition of the property, and the amount of money, like what's the ROI, factor in the ROI?
Well, that could be a whole study on its own, and I guess I could recommend doing that.
But yeah,
and every historic property is different and beautiful in its own way. So it's hard to, they're so different usually. I mean, they're not directly comparable. And Dana, you're nodding that.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. I mean, the setting and the history are desirable to share, but I think I get what you're saying, like, how bad is it on a scale or something like that?
Yeah, because we're going to have to go out and communicate.
But I mean, they did the conditions report, and I think during that would be the time during the property conditions report to say, like, this building is not something that can be salvageable, but you're saying, like, the bones in the structure are, intact, that it can be rehabbed.
It has conditions that we'd expect for a building of this age and how it's evolved and been modified and used over time, but nothing is extraordinarily different or challenging.
And I think in the phased sections in the latter part of the report, you speak to options within the scope of the property and the
Trying
surroundings
to tackle
of what
specific issues.
and giving suggestions on what to consider. Yeah, which help maybe answer that.
Yeah, for sure. You said you recommend a caretaker. Is that a person with a particular skill set, or is that just a body who lives there and is aware of his or her surroundings?
Well, we aren't saying absolutely have to do this. We just don't want to preclude the opportunity that may be beneficial for the township to consider. We work with a number of historic sites that have caretakers. Dana is caretaker at the Highlands. We actually shared, I went to some of our clients and asked them to share some of their documents that they use to interview and solicit interest in caretakers. So I think it can range, but generally, I mean, you can decide for what makes sense for the institution and for this property. Generally, we see that some skill sets are requested, whether that's specific types of maintenance or cleanup. Definitely some able body aspect is usually important, as well as being able and willing to greet people and give tours or be kind of available ad hoc for any kind of variety of needs.
I was going to say, to speak on further on what Claire's saying, there could be someone that's, an incredible plumber or electrician or something like that, which is great. But overall, I think I'm just speaking on my own experience, having someone on the property that's going to be aware of, like, they'll walk through the basement, they'll go through all the different floors to make sure, like, there's no leaking, nothing, like, I know from living in the old buildings, just like something sounds different, so like something's off, things like that. Someone being there all the time, that's also like security, so no one's trying to like break in or vandalize or anything like that. And just someone that's going to be, conscientious and care that if someone's on the property and they're walking to their car, like they'll answer questions and they'll have, maybe not full background in history, but at least know the bullet points and know the buildings well enough that they will, I do like, daily walks to like through all the buildings so I know everyth's okay.
An ambassador of sorts.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Darren, can you put your microphone on? I'm getting
off.
On.
It's not on.
Oh, the red is on?
Yeah, red is on.
I turned it off.
Yeah.
Okay.
I heard. I got a
Sorry
message.
about that. I thought I was being considerate. You talked about the difference between construction costs and capital needs. What's the difference?
Well, we just wanted to make the point that with planning and design projects, we often work with a professional construction cost estimator who will drill down into a scope of work and do whether conceptual or highly detailed estimates, takeoffs, if you will, that would be similar to what a contractor would do. We did not have that type of support on this phase of the project, so we used just very broad, what we call rough order magnitude, ROM square foot or unit budgets based on experience and square, the size and scope of the projects. So these are really just working targets. They have not been priced by a contractor or by a professional estimator. There's also the distinction between soft costs and hard costs and planning costs and things that might go into fundraising, and this is really more about the potential hard costs for capital investment into the property.
Okay, so if I heard this right, $1 million phase one makes it safe for cars and pedestrians to access the building. Is understanding that you didn't consult with someone who has the construction cost expertise, but is that $1 million going to get us close, or would we expect that once somebody with construction pricing experience comes in, he or she says, oh no, construction costs are actually going to be $500,000 or another $1 million?
Yeah, well, this is hard to see on the screen, but some of these numbers were based on grant applications that have been developed. One of the numbers is based on John Hosbach's number for the tree and site restoration. The rest are kind of target numbers that seemed reasonable to invest to get some traction and progress with stabilizing the buildings.
I guess what I'm trying to figure out is the fact that you let us know that this wasn't construction costs, was that to let us know that sometimes there are people you would like to have involved in gathering data that weren't involved, or should we be prepared to go into phase one thinking it'll probably be around $1 million, but be surprised because we didn't factor in any construction costs?
Well, the construction costs are factored in. They just have not been, and I think phase one in particular, if $1 million could be raised from grants and other funds and put towards the building, a lot will be accomplished.
Okay. And last question.
It would, we do, whenever possible, everyone benefits from availability of a construction cost estimator. It just wasn't feasible for available funding.
That's the nuance I was trying to figure out.
So
Thank you.
to tag along that question, though, I mean, given how fluid things change and costs change, especially now.
Yeah.
What is the time frame that makes the data given today, even with the cost estimator?
24 hours.
That's hard.
I mean, right. So, like, even if we had that as part of the plan or project,
you're going to have to reevaluate this on an ongoing basis. Yes.
Last question. Does the plan consider any outside pathways, improvements, hardscaping, or is the $5 to $6 million of what I understood to be like the guts, the buildings are going to be in tip-top shape? Is that just for interiors and exteriors of what's standing?
It includes the buildings, and it includes some pedestrian and vehicle access. And keep in mind, these are diagrams. These are not designs. It's not going to be a square, rectangular. It's just saying there's a space. So it includes improvements to vehicle and pedestrian access from Butler Pike and what we call an accessible route between those access points and the buildings, which is required for a public facility for accessibility. So it does not include, and wasn't really our charge, to look at all of the, I'll say, passive recreation opportunities that exist in the meadow or the surrounding landscape. But I think there's also open space funding that might supplement what's been outlined here.
Thank you for sitting through my deposition.
My pleasure.
Other questions? Yes.
Go ahead, Sadell.
Her mic's still off.
Am I unmuted?
Yeah,
Yes.
you're good.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank Claire and her team for putting this together. This is really a great beginning, first step, very big first step that sets the path forward. And this has been a long time coming and greatly appreciated. Claire, early on in your presentation, you very briefly referenced environmental concerns, and I'm assuming that refers to lead and asbestos. Can you elaborate on those items and tell us whether, to what extent will those contaminants be addressed in phase one?
There's certainly lead in paint. However, that is not at all unusual for buildings of this age, as we all know.
Right.
And that is kind of dialed into general construction costs that you don't, in this setting and for these uses, it's not the need to abate or remove every bit of lead, as long as it's encapsulated and covered or disposed of properly, and all specifications dealing with buildings older than the 1970s factor in those requirements, notifying contractors of the requirements for worker safety and disposal. So lead is on site, but it's really not a major factor. The asbestos is pretty limited. There are some what's called transite siding on the south side of Abolition Hall, and I can't remember if there's any other
Minor
flooring, yeah.
On the second floor of Mall Street Barn.
which again is something we encounter all the time and is not a major factor at all with handling and disposal, just needs to be dealt with properly in the documentation and specifications. So pretty limited concerns given property of this age and all the changes it's been through.
So would, with regard to the lead, would it have to be encapsulated throughout the spaces that will be made available for public use prior to the public having access?
Well, I mean, that generally that just means, and this is dialed in to the recommendations, proper painting and stabilization of the spaces before any occupancy. So any peeling paint or surfaces that need to be stabilized would be renovated and repaired prior to occupancy.
Okay, and the asbestos siding and I assume vinyl asbestos tile, if that's not loose and friable, can that just remain in place and the building still be used by the public?
Yes.
Okay.
Once that facade or wall work starts on that, that's when it would need to be addressed. And as you said, just awareness that the material shouldn't be disturbed in the interim.
Right, okay. I'm not quite sure how far this report goes, and I couldn't read the text from the screen, it's just too small, but in thinking about potential partners, I'm wondering whether you gave any consideration or explored the possibility of partnering with a for-profit entity that could potentially take advantage of the historic tax credits available by virtue of this property being on the National Register.
Yeah, we did not get into that level of potential partner identification, but
okay.
I can't speak for the committee, but it seems like exploring different configurations and types of partners makes sense.
Okay. And This is a follow-up to an earlier question regarding whether this report addresses the fields, the meadows, the fields. And obviously, as you said, that was not within the purview of this assignment, this report. But what would be your recommendation to come up with a plan for the fields, the roughly 8 acres of space?
Well, I think there's a variety of expertise that would be brought to kind of working group. I believe some of that is available with the township engineer, and some assessment has been done. Again, we have not been directly focused in that, but
Right.
I mean, it's definitely the potential, as with the buildings, to consider it in a incremental or phased approach. And again, some of that's underway with the invasives and tree and canopy restoration, and there's already a quite lovely mown trail that I think is inviting for use and would not require a great deal to, once issues of safe access are addressed, is there already to be used and enjoyed.
In a passive way, yes. Yeah. And I'm looking at the conceptual plan that's on the screen right now. And if you could just clarify, the rectangle that's to the right in the meadow, in the field, is that additional parking, proposed additional parking there?
That is a placeholder diagram. Like I said, it's not a design, don't know the size requirements, configuration, what makes sense for grading. It's just a placeholder on the plan to indicate that vehicular and emergency vehicles and pedestrian access connections at Butler Pike need to be explored, designed, funded, and developed.
Okay.
And also pedestrian continuity from the trailhead and the cross-county trail that would be established to the right of this plan.
Okay. And I'm obviously a lot of money has to be raised to realize all the phases of this plan. I'm wondering if, in the interim, it would be helpful and appropriate for the township to create some signage, perhaps interactive signage with QR codes that can take you on a tour of the buildings and review some of the history. And have you addressed any of that in this report?
Wayfinding or temporary signage, no.
Okay. Is that something that you think would be desirable and appropriate at this time to create some signage that would provide history? I mean, I don't know, I haven't seen the posters, I haven't seen all of the posters that Roy Wilson created, but I saw a few at an earlier meeting, and I'm thinking something like that, some photographs, QR code that takes you to website or even the blog posts that this young woman has created in conjunction with the Montgomery County Historical Society. Is that something you would support?
Well, I think the township is being intentional in terms of how the events and programs are being structured because of the lack of vehicular and easy pedestrian access. So a balance needs to be struck with appropriate timing for that, because in some ways it's don't want to be seen as inviting people into a situation that hasn't gone through the recommended steps
Right.
towards
Right.
safe use and access and occupancy.
Okay.
So I think it's all a matter of when the appropriate timing to fit in to incremental improvements.
Right. Reasonable. Okay. And I have one last question. Does this report conclude the work that you were contracted to do under the existing contract?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your thoughtful answers.
Thank you.
Other questions? So that's a great segue with Siddell's last question on, does this conclude your project with us? And I believe it does. What is the typical, after something is done, is there a period of like, yes, we're allowed to go back and ask you questions still?
Absolutely. We're not going
I'm
right.
not. I just have more questions.
You're done.
You're done.
You maxed out.
Yeah,
You're available, yes.
very good. Very
Thank you.
good. Okay.
Thank you
Still a
very much.
lifeline. Excellent. Okay.
Thanks, Claire.
So that report that she shared will be available for everybody to review. And, we will talk more about like next steps with phase one as we continue on and the 501 is developed and, what are those next steps? So a lot happening while we're also doing program development with tours and Juneteenth and other conversations about future events. So that kind of is a good segue to the next quick topic about, we have the tours and Juneteenth set. Are there other ideas right now, or can we leave this meeting tasking everybody to come up with plans for the upcoming summer, fall, winter season? So things to think about.
I have an idea, piggybacking on what Siddell said, and piggybacking on what Mr. Wilson's currently doing, is it would probably be very easy to throw up a website unless there wanted to be a page off of the township website.
There is
We
a
have-
page on the township website.
Where, Realtor yard signs, that kind of media could be around the property or on certain sides of the building where there is a QR code so that someone could walk up to it and then their phone would launch the relevant part of the website so that when Mr. Wilson's not around all the time, people could still get value and education from walking the property.
I think what we could do is, as you heard, Rob is working on the video with Mr. Wilson, and once that's done, we can kind of clip it out so that when you're in front of, one Germantown Pike, you could click it and that portion of the video would come up, and then the Malsby Barn, and then the Abolition Hall, and we could do it that way once that video's up. I think that might.
Yeah, basically a QR code that leads you to a virtual tour.
Yes.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
And Craig, while my mic's on, could you find out what the ETA is on the nonprofit corp formation and the filing of the 501c3?
Yeah.
Thanks.
I think do we know any, if we knew how long it would take, I think it was
I think he gave us
a time frame.
a time frame way back when. I think it was like 6 to 9 months that once the paperwork is in. So I thought that's, I'd have to look back at my notes, but I think
That's accurate. I'm more focused on us getting the paperwork in to the state,
Okay.
to the state and to the IRS.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah.
That was a-
Oh, that'll be sooner than 6 to 9 months, yeah.
All right.
Sadell, is your hand still up, Sadell, or you got more?
She's still muted.
Hand is up.
Okay.
Okay. This is a question about grants. I believe that there's 3 grant applications that have been submitted, the PHMC/Keystone Planning Grant, a grant to the estate, I forget which agency, and a small PICO grant. Craig, can you report on the status of those applications?
We're still waiting on them, yes.
They're in the minutes from last week or month.
And the Keystone grant, they typically announce in June. Have you had any inklings which way that's going?
I have not.
Okay. Thank you.
And are those grants time-bound? Like, if we get awarded those grants, do we have to spend the money within a certain amount of time?
Usually there's a time frame, but it's usually 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
And I mean, the one grant I think is for like $250,000. That would be the one for the parking lot and the trails and the access. And the other ones are smaller. Like the PICO grant, I think is like $10,000 for planting trees, which, the fall would be a great time to do that. And the other one's for like $25,000. So it's great money, but it's not like, hey, here's $3 million and go, figure it all out.
Yeah.
So, but there usually is an end date that you have to have everything in and completed by a certain time. But it's usually, they give you plenty of time to do that. So, I did hear back from John, and the invasives does include the Hall property and the course and track, both.
Very good.
Nice.
So,
Any public comments? Any further general? Go ahead. Yeah, Mike, please.
Tam Paulitz, Edmonds Road. I'm coming in way late to the game here. This is the first meeting I've been able to come to. I've been trying to follow what you've all been doing, and I'm so impressed that you've taken on this monster of a task and you're doing a bang-up job getting it going. I'm really, really happy to hear everything that you've been up to. I wanted to speak to you about the land management, and I may be too late for this, but I just wanted to give you some things that could maybe make it easier for how to approach it. I had been thinking about how the Well Street Park started out as the Gambone Tract, and you had some recommendations from Natural Lands Trust back in 2015. The recommendations are still on the township website under Gambone, what do they call it? Gambone Property Natural Area Stewardship Plan. When I was going through there, they were recommending to also reference their stewardship manual, which has been updated, and they worked in collaboration with We Conserve PA, and it's called the Stewardship Handbook, and it's under library.weconservepa.org, and it's a beautiful document that gives you some guidelines for where do you begin and how do you look at this in phases. What do you tackle first and what do you put down the road? And they actually recommend not removing all invasives all at one time if you've got a really degraded property, in order to have some habitat that's available for wildlife that's there. You're not displacing everything all at once. So it's a nice way to approach it without being overwhelmed, I think. So if it's not too late, I hope that you'll have time to look at that. And the second thing that I'd like to bring to your attention is High School Park in Cheltenham Township. This is an 11-plus acre property that was an open space initiative. I believe that goes back to the mid-90s. And this, you can find this on FHSP.org. That's Friends of High School Park, and they have made an effort to create a space that's a native ecosystem. And they've got a creek, they've got woodlands, they've got an open meadow. It's incredibly well laid out. People can walk there in this space and be out in the sun in the meadow on a cool day. They can be completely in the shade and still see the meadow on a hot day. And there's lots of variety in the native species. And the most wonderful thing about this is that they want to educate other municipalities of how to go about doing this. They've got lots of experience. The person to contact is Cynthia Blackwood, and you can find her information on that website, and she will be absolutely happy to take you for a tour and tell you the things that they've done. And they've made this a space that's a meeting place for the public. So they have events, they've got an arts day coming up, they have music, all different kinds of activities with kids, and they love to share it. So I hope that you'll look into that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have you been there?
I was just there today for my second visit.
Okay.
And yes, and I'm amazed at the variety of things that they have.
How does it visually compare with if you've been to the site that this township developed on Flowertown Road? Right by the hills? Is that where it is?
Oh, yes. It's bigger than that, obviously, with being 11 plus acres. It's completely different because the site is different.
Okay.
And on Flowertown Road, that's a wetland area. You're talking about Dixon Meadow?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that what I'm talking about?
Yes, yes, that's a wetland area, so that's got like a boardwalk through the wetlands. This was once the site of a high school plus 2 other schools. It was all in one complex, and the buildings were abandoned, went to heck, and one of the buildings burned dramatically. And at that point, people in the community decided they wanted to take control of this. So it was people in the community who stepped up and made this happen, which is, just a phenomenal thing. And they're doing a fabulous job getting volunteers in there and getting a lot of excitement about the place. So it's uphill, and it's very rectangular because it was buildings. Mm-hmm. So they have a rectangular meadow in the center with meandering paths that go through it. Then around that area, there's some open. Then they have small fruit trees in a ring around that. Huge variety of fruit, and a lot of it is not people fruit so much as birds would go for the fruit. And then outside of that, they have the high canopy with a nice sort of S-shaped curve path that goes through it. So you can visually see through all of these layers and experience each layer separately in a relatively small area. And it provides so much variety of habitat for all different kinds of wildlife. They have signage here and there, just things to think about, smell the smells, and have different experiences. They have different art kind of projects that are put in there. It's wonderful. And it's not super polished because it's so much taken care of by the volunteers. Just today, the meadow had sections of it that were sprayed where they're trying to keep their mugwort problem under control. That's a really obnoxious invasive non-native plant that's gotten in there. So they're managing it in patches, not the whole thing at once. So you have some of the meadow that still looks good and is blooming, and the others have these brown patches. So they're putting a lot of thought into how they're doing it, managing as best they can, and doing it in phases. And it's an ongoing project that's been going on for all these years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Deborah Harris, Pilgrim Road. Just got a second reading that report that Natural Lands put out with We Conserve. I read it separately from Tam, and it's very inspirational, the way it talks about stewardship. So if you sometimes wonder why are we going to put money into things like invasives and native planting, it was the big opening of it was really inspirational, as well as being very practical on what it was going to do. So that's just what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you.
Claire, does the report that you guys produced contemplate the stuff that we would also find in We Conserve PA?
Well, I think that was similar to the question that Seidel asked about the meadows, and our focus was really
Okay.
on the buildings and the
So
immediate
this would be
surrounding area.
complementary to what you
Yeah,
just said.
absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, thanks.
Yes, Sadell?
Actually, Steve Kaufman, my husband, would like to say something, ask a question or say something. So I'm just going to let him speak.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick since the hour is late. But I'm inspired both by what Tam had to say and also Deborah's past contributions and research on that establishes the fact that we kind of have a lot of money to put into this on the landscaping side. And I'm chair of the Whitemarsh Open Space Committee. I'm not speaking on that behalf. I'm just speaking as someone who thinks he knows about the open space law because he's the chair and has read it a few times. But we haven't discussed this as a committee. Act 153, which authorizes the township to tax wages at 0.25%, which we've been doing since 2007 or so, is now pulling in about $2.5 million a year. The Open Space Fund has about $10 million in the bank. On top of that, this $2 million gives the Open Space Fund some borrowing capacity. And by the way, that's a net of about $2 million after receiving $2,500,000 every year. There's some bond issue interest still being paid off, et cetera. But at any rate, we have this tremendous resource, and the state, I believe, Deborah, in 2022 amended its Act 153 to say that not only can you spend this open space money on maintenance and restoration of land that was acquired with 153 money, but you can also use it for any public park area. So there is a potential here to plan for something kind of grand that would include the course and tract, Hob, and then I guess there's about 10 acres of rather damp township land that adjoins Hob. So that, with some money and some vision and some good stormwater people, it might be possible to do something fascinating back there, especially if it's done with the sort of intelligence and care that Tam was describing. So I know this is not within the current scope, but to my mind, it makes sense for the township to think, okay, we ought to be thinking about the 8 acres at Corson, the 2.5 or so at Hob, and this additional 10 acres, and how can it be looked at as a unity? And of course, this ties into the proposed trail, Cross County Trail. But with the type of money we have in the Open Space Fund, it would be quite easy to fund the comprehensive restoration plan for the entire area and perhaps even some of the capital costs of restoring things. So I just wanted to encourage you to think about that, and perhaps that can run to some extent on a parallel track with the buildings, even though, of course, the two have to be coordinated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
If I have one.
Yeah.
Ward Wilson. Just listening to the comments about the parkland and the use in the fields and all that. Just comment that a more contemporary site like you're talking about, Abolition Hall has a lot of history. It goes way back, and one historical part of it you might want to keep in mind in the future is that the strip from that runs along the back of all those other houses that parallels Germantown Pike, that was always known as the orchard. And they always talk about low-hanging fruit when you're talking about what you should. That would be a great place to have an orchard, because that's what it was. Thomas Hovenden painted it in the 1800s, but he certainly didn't plant all those trees. They came long before he did. And farms in those days usually had multiple ways of, your chickens, your turkeys, your cows, and all this, and you have trees because you're growing your fruit. And that was where the orchard was. And that'd be a great place to recreate one.
Love that.
Yeah, excellent.
Thank you, Roy.
Great, okay. The next committee meeting date, that makes, to make the meeting take even longer.
I don't know if we talked about it.
No, I don't know that we did. Are Thursdays now, is this doable? It's better than Mondays, I think.
Like every month on a Thursday?
Possibly, at least we could plan out for June. Sadly, you will not be putting this on your calendar, though, I don't think. We're going to call you.
You never know.
You just wait. We're going to just add an agenda point randomly, so you might want to just save the date. We'll see.
Yeah.
What are we looking at, June? I mean,
Are you free in June?
is that 4 weeks away? I mean, we're going to have anything?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah, I guess the
Or
only
should
thing
we
that's
do, like-
happening is that we would know about Marple Lane if the
Marple
Board of
Lane.
Supervisors meet on the 11th.
And we just have an
We could just-
update about
yeah.
the
An update on 501c3.
the 501, but-
14 Marple Lane.
further planning for the summer, fall. I think it might be good to meet.
So maybe we want to do it after Juneteenth and hear about
Yes,
how that
agreed.
went.
Yeah, like June
Agreed.
25th, Thursday, June 25th.
I think that makes sense to do.
Okay. That,
Is that open?
well, according to this calendar, yes, it's open.
Okay, let's plan for that.
Thursday, June 25th.
Is Claire going to be accessible for that?
It's on the calendar.
We'll get Clara Pager.
I would assume that once this thing goes on the website that you've created, there'll be a lot of questions.
That's true. Once, her report will be included in the meeting minutes, so.
You could certainly join through Zoom if you didn't want to schlep from.
We'll play it by ears.
Very good. That's fair. Okay, thank you, everybody. Do I have a?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Thank you. Take care. Good night.
Yeah.